Deu certo?
Então, finalzinho, acho que já estamos online agora. E aqui é a câmera.
Aonde ali, né?
Isso.
Tá.
Tá com delay, né? Isso. Acho que já. Então, e aqui é a câmera.
Tem que ter um delayzinho, tem um delay no YouTube, né?
Desliguei aqui a...
O retorno, né? Tá.
Agora fica à vontade.
Tá bom, tá bom. E aí o Lisandro vai passar a apresentação aqui, né? Vai passar no Zoom.
Isso aí, a gente compartilha.
Ótimo.
Já vai pra lá.
Mas aí quando ele mexer ali, já mexe aqui e lá no coisa também.
Isso.
Tá.
Não, a gente colocou aqui. Se quiser que seja conectado no nosso dele, eu tenho que
Não, mas aqui tá bom. Não, aqui tá. Tá bem legal, não sei o quê. Então, bom, então podemos começar. Tá bom?
Sim, pode
Bom,
apresentar.
gente, então, boa tarde para todo mundo. A gente está aqui nesse momento, é mais um seminário dentro da disciplina de seminários da pós-graduação do CST, né? Inclusive, queria agradecer a Leila por ter ajudado a organizar isso, e a Luciana por ter aberto esse espaço, né? Ter aberto mais para a gente ter esse momento, né? E, né, do Silene aqui, a Nayara, o ter feito essa coisa. Bom, a Nayara começou essa articulação toda, né? Mas... Então, e agradecer ao Leandro, o Lisandro, olha, Leandro. O Lisandro em espanhol, Leandro deve ser em português. Agradecer ao Lisandro por estar aqui com a gente, né? O Lisandro é um colega, já um amigo de alguns anos, já a gente trabalhou junto no IPCC, no ARC, né, no capítulo da América Central e América do Sul, né? E o Lisandro era da Faculdade de Economia e Governo da Universidad San Sebastián, que fica em Valdívia, que é o sul do Chile, né? Trabalha muito nessa interface de mudança climática, de recursos hídricos, que é central no contexto regional, e com produção, né? Então, esse universo de como mudança climática afeta a produção, isso afeta questões sociais, né? E ele vai falar para a gente especificamente de um artigo que a gente está produzindo juntos e que dialoga nesse universo, né? Então, Lisandro, muito obrigado, muitas graças por estar aqui conosco. E aí o Lisandro vai falar em inglês, né? Porque senão eu vou começar a falar em espanhol, daí vai ser uma vergonha total aqui. Então é isso. Oi? Alguém quer falar alguma coisa? A Leila, pois não. Pode.
É porque eu não estou vendo no YouTube, gente.
Tá aqui.
A Nayara está vendo. Você está no YouTube, certo?
Atualiza o link.
Continua não aparecendo. Não no link que a gente divulgou.
Será que a gente está? Então.
Agora vamos ter que divulgar outro.
Vamos ter que divulgar outro,
Leila, desculpa. Acho que quando a gente cancelou e ligou de novo, deve ter criado outro.
Acho que foi isso.
Mas não dá para pegar o anterior e refazer?
A gente envia esse de agora,
A gente
já está online, e aí ela divulga.
E quem está online, o que acontece?
Não, porque ninguém está no outro. No outro deve ter alguém, né? Ou não?
Nós podemos comentar lá. Eu entro no Gmail e explico que a gente vai para outro link, tá bom?
Tá bom, obrigada. Desculpe interromper, professor.
Não, mas obrigado, Leila. Obrigado por informar a gente aí. Então podemos começar? Podemos tocar, então, nesse link aí do YouTube? Então beleza. É melhor apagar aqui, né? Ô, Celso.
Sim.
Hi everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to INPE to having me to host this presentation today, and also to Jan to host to allow the opportunity to be here and to present you this piece of research that we are still developing. As Jan said, I am working in the interface of natural resources and socioeconomic issues. So I don't know if you are familiar with those topics. Probably you are more in geoscience, so maybe this could be a little bit different for you. I don't know, but anyway, all the comments are welcome in this research. So the research is entitled "Climate Change and Water Right Transactions in Mediterranean Chile: a Spatial Model." I don't know if you are familiar with that, but in Chile we have we have two markets, one market for land and one market for water, the water right. I don't know if you are familiar with that. So the situation is very particular and it's very special, and it is understudied. So we are here trying to relate this situation with climate change and with the potential effects of climate change on specifically on prices. Well,
Perdão, pode falar um pouco mais alto?
Okay.
Eu creio as pessoas. E o microfone fica onde?
Ali na
Ali na câmera.
It's like,
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, if you just talk a little bit loud.
okay. As I say, this in this paper we try to understand the relationship between the market and the water market and climate change. So we focused specifically on Mediterranean area of Chile. I don't know if you know, but Mediterranean areas in the world are five. The Mediterranean in Europe, South Africa, California, Australia, and Central Chile. Okay, those areas are very particular because they are very productive in terms of agricultural production, but very dependent on water resources. Okay, and the idea here is to develop a model to relate climate change and this water right market. Okay. The next one. Yep. Okay. I have to say thank you to the funding. The grant allows me to be here. Research grant of Fuentes. That is the name of the grant. Okay. It's necessary. Thanks. As an introduction, we have to say that we have a lot of change in the resources, water resources. Because on the supply side, we have changed related to climate change and stress on several bases in one hand, and in another hand we have several problems related to pressure from various simultaneous use of water. This is critical for Chile. In Chile, we have since around 15 years mega drought, a phenomenon named mega drought. That is a very persistent drought that is putting a lot of pressure over water resources and several basins, especially in the Mediterranean area of Chile. This is not my appreciation is part of, for example, of a recent OECD report. That is the OECD report on environmental performance that it assess the Chilean environmental performance. They have several critiques in two specific points: the decoupling of economic growth and environmental pollution, one hand, and in another hand, the problem of water management in Chile. There is a lot of suggestions and inquiries related to how Chile is managing the water resource management. So we need to advance in several plans at basin level to understand the problems that are related with these institutional issues. So a lot of work need to be done in this line. That is the key message of OECD report. Well, water rights are part of a legal framework that, as I say, there is established a market for water rights for the use of water, allow possession, commercialization. Water is declared a national good for public use, but it's allowed to make an appropriation of those rights. So it is established in the 80s. So in around 20 years ago, they put a non-use tariff to avoid speculation and accumulation of those rights. But there is not a real effect on the water market. So in fact, the water rights are treated as real estate goods. Okay, so when you buy a house, you have to register it in a
deed.
Sorry?
Deed.
Yeah, you have to register it. It's very complex. You have to pay a tax. It's a very complex process. So water rights are treated in the same way in Chile. It's a problem because it doesn't allow to have information about prices and about owners of the water rights and a lot of other issues related to that. In economics, we say that there is a lot of information asymmetries, okay, or transaction costs. But if you are asking in one basin, for example, what is the price of one water right, it's not possible to respond that because we didn't have appropriate register, public register. It's not possible. So in this research, we use a subset of data that is generated by the pricing process of water for residential consumption. Okay, we have consent. We have licitation for water, domestic water at each basin, and those process. One factor of that process is if the water extracted from the river. So the state tried to put a price that is equals to the marginal cost of water. So with this, they examine each basin to establish the more credible, the more correct or credible transactions. Okay, it's a very complex topic, but it's the way to have information in this case, because as I say, it's very complex to have information of the whole market. There are previous studies related to partial geographical analysis, for example, one basin, one specific region. Problem with data. Nowadays, we have changing conditions. Most of the studies are from 20 years ago, not recent. We have a lot of risk with water resources now. As I said, we have a mega drought that is pressing the management of these resources. And we have also new regulation, new standards. We have a new reform of the water code, that is the law that allows to manage water resources. That is now being analyzed and will be try to make one kind of reset of the system water rights in coming years. So they need a lot of information in terms of policy to decide what we are doing and we will do with water rights and water markets. So this is very important. Well, the point is that this study seeks to analyze the influence of climate variability, inter-river basin dynamics in water right transaction in Mediterranean Chile. One hand, and also try to projecting future scenarios based on IPCC climate projections. It's a very big caveat, but we try to make this in a very simple way. The specific objectives of this study are identifying temporal and spatial variations in water right prices on one hand, and in the other side, assessing the effects of projected climatic variables on water market dynamics. That's the idea. It's a very economic analysis, but it's very simplistic in some. So we cannot study all the country because we didn't have information of all the basins. In Chile, we have 100 basins. So we have, in this case, we will use information from 16 basins only because we concentrate our analysis in the Mediterranean area of Chile. And we have only one framework of 10 years. 10 years is our time frame. So we use the superintendency tarification of water, of domestic water processes around, but we find a lot of problems with those data. Finally, we use only 8,000, more than 8,000 data or transactions, individual transactions. Okay. We have quantity type of water right, measure of amount of transaction in monetary terms is UF, that is a measure that captures inflation. It's a standard in terms of money, and we have liters per second because the portion of water right that is allowed to sell and to buy is a kind of portion of the water stream. But it's not a volume of water; it's a portion of the volume of the river that is stream flow, or caudal in Spanish. That is a volume per time. Okay, a volume per time. It's a little bit complex because across the year the stream flow is not the same, as you know. In summer and winter is very different, especially for Mediterranean areas that has a lot of market, a lot of strong seasons conditions. So, but anyway, this design is from the 70s.
It's a mean value from the 70s.
Yeah.
No.
They use data from probably from the 50s to 70s. I don't know. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, a lot of river basins has over allocation of water rights. Percent over allocation of water rights because they more possible to. And in some cases you have the water right, but the river doesn't have the water.
Yes.
And you cannot extract the water. It could happen, especially in this area, in the Mediterranean.
Surface water or groundwater?
Surface water. Yeah. Surface. This is a map, as I know you like maps.
We have the Mediterranean area of Chile. We have not all the river basins. Unfortunately, we didn't have register for all the river basins. So, and we have several differences among river basins in terms of number of registers of transactions. So, for example, well, in the north, 44, etc. Here, this is close to the capital. Has a lot of information. Well, no, here. There are several differences across the number of transactions per river basin. So what we did here is to estimate a mean price per month per river basin. In order to analyze the problem more simply, because it's a lot of work to understand this in terms of individual. So we put a price per month per basin. So we have 16 river basins per 10 years per 12 months. So that's the data. It's very simple. Okay. And we use well, the mean because it's more simple, but we can use, for example, geometrical mean. So we use a lot of configurations, but finally the mean is okay. In some months we didn't have data, so we use a process to revise data. The data set that is also an issue here, because by this it's possible to develop this kind of reconstruction of data. Okay. These are the data, the original data from the year to the end, with more density in the last years, obviously, a lot of registers and more information. Then we integrate this with meteorological information. In Chile, we have a platform named CAMELS. CAMELS has a lot of recopilation of meteorological station data. We use a lot of that. Platform is very good for us, and we integrate that with our data. We calculate precipitation, mean temperature, SPI, that is an index for drought, as you know. You're probably you are more familiar than me with that. And then we select future scenarios from the socioeconomic shared pathways. We have some information across the data from the in terms of the land use of the river basin, and we integrate, for example, the scarcity degrees. In Chile we have the scarcity degrees, that is a tool mainly for municipalities. The mayor of each municipality goes to the presidential office and say, hey, I am in a scarcity state, so please give me money to start more water, to feed animals, etc. And that is important also because they are some. It's not technical, but it's a political decision, so can allow us to say what is the regulation. Many municipalities also use lags to understand the dynamic of prices and well, the model that we are using here is a dynamic spatial double model. This is a very simple regression. So we have, for example, traces related to prices in the last year, a lot of covariates, and W matrix that allow us to understand the spatial effects across basins, and error.
That is the idea. It's a very old model used in economics. We use natural logarithms of prices to fit this, and the observation here is at basic level, not at transaction level. Okay. The most notable feature of this model is that we can understand we can integrate the spatial dependence across the river basin and also temporal effects. Okay. It's possible to separate, for example, effects related to these variables, this covariant, and effect related to space, for example. That's the idea. It's more complex that some results related to this. This is a descriptive statistics of the data set. We use, for example, mean flow. Well, we have the price. It's not here the data, but I don't know. But we have the prices, the transaction flow, as to say, the mean flow transacted per period at the river basin, liters per second. Maximum monthly precipitation per river basin, binary variable to detect season, the presence of mining at the river basin, the number of transactions, if we have a more active or less active market at river basin level, and we have flow with the scarcity degree and interaction between maximum flow per basin. The declaration of one or more scarcity degree at the period, lack of prices, as I say, lack of scarcity degrees, and an indicator of drought. Also, we have spatial interaction effects at W matrix. That is not here. Well, this. Something happens here. What is the main message here? A lot of we have an interesting case related to spatial influence. So the message here is that the prices are related to the closest river basin that we are analyzing. Also, lack of price is significant. That is common in this kind of models, and other variables related. Well, this is a common regression, as we said. It's not a very difficult to understand, but the difference are these tables that are the effects. We can separate direct and indirect effects. This well, the total effect is here, and we can separate across direct and indirect effect. The direct effect are related to all the covariates in our model, and the indirect effect are related to spatial effects across each variable. So it's interesting to see that, for example, there are a lot of a lot of weight related to original variables, but also there is one kind of spatial relation with the behavior of these variables. And other interesting effect is that we have a long-term direct effect, and we have a total effect, and we have a opposite effect in long terms, in terms of direct effect and indirect effects. Okay, it's this kind of the composition of the effects. Well, but where are the scenarios? We take the model and modify and use we added the methodological projections of two different IPCC scenarios, and we incorporate those variables in our model. It's a little bit crazy, but the results are very reasonable in terms of, well, we have, for example, the SSP1 with an increase of 0.5 to 2.6 degrees. We have this situation related to prices, well, the blue. And we have, for example, for a CSP5 with 8.5 increasing degrees in temperature, we have this effect. Higher prices, and this the this is to understand the relationship among prices and the scenarios. It's very simplistic, but it's very it has a lot of force, I think, because it's a little bit logic. I feel like there's one kind of maps related to the, well, normally it's differences of prices. We detect, for example, for the SSP1, that prices are higher at the beginning of the study period, and the difference is less at the end. And on the opposite side, we have more low differences in the first years for SSP8, and a lot of differences for the end of the study period, at the end of the century. Very simplistic ideal is a very interesting. Some findings related to this paper. Climate change impacts water use and water markets. That is the first finding. We have a spatial interdependence of river basins of prices. This spatial interdependence is related, is detected for our model. This model can be a kind of research framework. We have a market sensitivity, so we need to explore this in more detail. And some policy and research recommendations are related to understand this with more details, a lot of details that are not complete here, but it's possible to understand this with more details. Well, some limitations. We are generalizing this. There are a lot of particularities across river basins, so we use one register per river basin. So it's very reductionist approach, but we didn't have more data, so we need to use this data to say that and to understand what can we learn from economic theory and data in the field. Some questions related to causes and correlations. We need to understand things in more detail. We for example didn't have water quality indicators. We didn't incorporate quality indicators. Maybe we can try. We can. It's a possibility to improve the model. For example, incorporate some indicator of water quality or land use. We use a lot of land use indicators, but they didn't were significant or relevant for our model. That is, land use changes speed is slow, so it's not well. And our data are across this period of time are very different. They are different sources. So maybe it can be a problem of technology also for the study period. The technology of that. That's all.
Thanks, Lisandro. I think, I don't know if there's any questions from here, but I just would like to highlight some aspects that first, the interesting perspective of water market. So this is not something that we see here. It's not the reality of Brazil. So water has a cost, but there's no market. You cannot buy and sell water on little bottles like that. So this, I think, is it's an interesting perspective in terms of understanding the value of natural resource. And I think in our work here, we, in a way, we look slightly to the economic as a component of the system. So normally it's one of the indicators, is not the main source of evaluation or something. So, so to evaluate the value of we talk about ecosystem service, but we don't, how we gonna label that with a cost. So that's a challenge that I think, we face to that. So I think that those information are quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that it's relevant. It's very particular, like we our case, have a market for water, but allow us. This kind of studies can allow us to, for example, evaluate, for example, the ecosystem service of water provision, right? For example, in Chile, we're working now on natural capital. We have some examples for one basin, and we are just obtaining a grant to study modern focus for 2 years. Analysis for natural capital in only one basin, unfortunately. But we are trying to understand that, and one specific limitation is we can use geophysical information to understand, to simulate, to estimate water stream flows, but all we can evaluate that is not possible if you really have a market or one idea of a market. And so this information can use directly to do that. It's really important for us. We are using that to understand, for example, water provision, ecosystem services. So we have a lot of limitations. People have a lot of this information, for extension cost, but allow us to have an idea, at least for the minimum, as you say, of the nature of water in this case.
Falam em português ou em inglês?
Em português devagar, eu acho que...
Em português, durante toda a apresentação, eu entendo que são diferentes, é diferente mesmo a situação do Chile e do Brasil, porém, me lembra muito o sistema de outorga de direito de uso de recursos hídricos aqui no Brasil, mais especificamente o antigo DAE e o atual ASP Águas, que também tem essa dinâmica de precificação pelo uso, né? Então, it's not like a market where you sell it, it's like you ask for
It's a right to use.
Exactly. And according to your use, you ask for it, and you can like have a dispensa.
Dispensa?
Tem a dispensa. E tem
free of licitation.
Free licitation of use, and for 15 cubic meters, metros cúbicos.
Até determinado.
Isso, até 15 metros cúbicos você não precisa pagar por aquilo. É uma dispensa de outorga. Mas a partir disso, eles são cobrados pelo uso. Então existe uma dificuldade existe uma dificuldade do Estado, no caso, esse sistema do SP Águas é aqui do Estado de São Paulo, né? Existe uma dificuldade de como que você vai cobrar por isso, e aí como que você vai monitorar se eles estão gastando realmente o tanto que eles falaram que iria gastar, por exemplo, desde o tanto que eles falaram que iam tirar do rio até o tanto que eles iam tirar debaixo da água, e aí eu senti muita semelhança no que você disse, apesar de ser mercados diferentes, né? Mas que é muito parecido com o sistema de outorgas aqui.
Yes, in our market, you buy the right ones and use it forever. That's the idea.
Se você é um fazendeiro,
But you have one stream flow, one liter per second, 2 liters per second. But one structural difference is that we have the water we didn't have monitoring of what the system is designed to don't have to monitorize it.
because it was established long ago, or what? It was established, like decades ago or something.
Yeah, it's in the 80s, in the beginning of the 81. The idea was to promote the investment. So you can buy the water rent and, for example, establish a plantation of avocados or anything. That's the idea.
If you have a water right, you can sell the water.
Yeah. You can sell the water or sell the
Water
water.
right, pode vender aquela água, por exemplo. E aqui você tem que usar. A não ser que você seja um mercado de consumo.
If in Chile, if you don't use the water, you have to pay a tax. But previous studies say that the tax didn't disincentivize the accumulation. Water.
And when you buy this water right, you only buy it once. It's just one time you buy it. You don't have to
And so you have to pay, for example, in some agricultural renovations, you have to pay a tax to the
Renew.
there is one kind of organization of water users that try to administrate the water in the season, in the growing season for the crops. So you have to pay, but it's a very small amount of money. So it's very.
Just to make clear, there is no any exception for public use for municipalities or under no requirement for bids as she asked under considering low usage of water.
Yeah, the last reform of the code, the water code, established priorities. For example, human consumption, public consumption, agricultural consumption, and other uses. But it is something new. It is also challenging for because
Transition.
at ecological flows, we are since maybe 3 years ago we have like I'm not sure, but recently we are incorporating ecological flows also in order to maintain a flow that is already for the villages. Yeah, it's a new something.
It's not the system, right? Something new for the system.
Yeah.
Because I think like hydropower, they already consider ecological flow, so they have to keep a flow downstream.
Yeah.
Because of ecological flow, things like that, and also for people to access and all this. So but in this water market, which is a new thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how this water market is like vantajoso.
What is the benefit?
The benefit is that if you can allow to free trade of water rights, they will move to the more to the use that generate more marginal value. That's the idea behind that.
Como se vendesse outorga.
It's a very economic vision. It's a very,
But what, just one point, how the water rights actually dialogue with the rights that people have to access water?
in general, water rights are more related to production and more than human consumption. So in general, we have ecological flow, human consumption, sanitaries, utilities. Okay. Utilities. And then we have the market in the bottom rated. Yeah. Anyway, in some cases, in some basins, for example, in Central Chile, in the north of Santiago, Santiago is the capital, in the center, just in the center. We have a lot of problems, for example, with monocultures of avocados and communities without access to water. There's a lot of problem there. Without, but it's the new regulation of water code is trying to afford these issues, but it's not clear if it will be operated in the future.
Yeah.
That's sad.
I'm curious about the projection for the future. You have this project of increasing prices. That came up directly from the model regression from the prices to the meteorological variables, right? And you only have the only effect that it's driving this increase in prices or decrease in prices are due to droughts in the future. Do these scenarios have larger droughts or?
I don't know the detail of the scenarios. I don't know the detail of the scenarios, but I have to mention that our model reflects the scarcity effect.
Right.
So the future precipitations are provoking higher prices. That is the idea. It's a very simplistic and very.
No, but I wonder if that was put in the model or that came up out of the interaction of the regression itself, you know?
We put it in the model.
You really put a relation of price with the against the scarcity of water, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting on that line, sorry, I don't know if there's anyone else, just make a question, but just to not lose this point that Celso brought, is that I know, so the SSP 2, I think it was 1 or 2.5, the SSP 2, right, the 1. So I would just like you to explore a little bit why the prices goes down in that, so maybe just, explore a little bit that perspective of pricing way down. It might be, you're having, I don't know if there's any elements in the climate projection that you have increase of water availability or that scenario.
Well, you have to look at the climatic variables too.
Yeah.
But we use only climatic variables to derive scenarios, not the scenarios as in order to understand the problem in a simple and affordable way.
Right.
Right.
And you commented CIS, Superintendência of Sanitary Services.
Yeah.
It's like CEDES aqui, será?
Eu acho que é.
It's the utility regulated.
It's like como é que é a empresa mesmo?
The company.
A company that provide clean water for the people who use in the cities.
Yeah, the superintendency is the regulator. We have, in most of cases, private enterprises providing water for houses. This superintendency regulate and say which will be the price, what will be the price that you can, that people have to pay.
one more comment, like, what about the poor people? We see that in the draw cases that obviously the price will go up because there is less water to use, and what about the people that have enough money to pay? They will be private.
Yeah. The last modification of the water code is that we established prioritization of uses. And the first one is human consumption. In some cases, for example, the market will be closed and not allowed. Will be transaction can be allowed for restrictions only if human consumption is covered. That's the idea. Well, as I say, in some regions, especially in the center of the country, we have a lot of problems with over-exploitation, over-allocation of water rights, and for example, problems with communities. That's a reality. That's if you travel to Chile and go close to Santiago, you will see some valleys very dry, and for example, avocados, plantations, and communities with less access to water. But the regulation is changing, so we expect that the situation will improve. Also, we have to mention that next year, that is not sure that next year will be, maybe in 2 years more, there will be one kind of reset of the system. People who is not using their water rights, they will lose it. It's a very hard, it's a very interesting case to study. Yeah, it will be in April 2026, but it's not clear. I think it will be 2 years because the politicians are trying to move that. But it happens.
The treatment of waste and residues from water consumption are also responsibility of these companies, or are regulated by another code, and maybe just to again make a to understand it, compare with our model here. It's also a responsibility of these companies, of these agencies.
It's a responsibility from the companies. They have to trade the water that is used by houses. But you have to pay in your house for that. You pay for water that you receive, and you pay also portion to cleaning of water. That's the market. Yeah, it's part of it. Okay, yeah. And the superintendency answer goes to the plants and say, which is the quantity of water.
Yeah. But we do have this too. You pay for the sewage, you pay for the water you consume, and it's in the same bill.
But is a fixed value according
to what
you consume.
É exatamente igual. O mesmo tanto que você consome, tudo que você gasta de água é o tudo que você gasta de esgoto.
Proporção fixa, né?
É igual.
And there is some interesting new issues related to water markets. For example, desalination of water is a kind of solution that is very particularly is changing, especially in the north of Chile. In the north, we have mining, we have maybe a lot of water, and also we are doing some investment in desalination, and also in some cities of the north. But we have that's one change, and the other change is the treated water that is incorporated to the to stream flow, and how it is changing the market, the use of water is not studied yet, but we need to understand what's happening here.
So how do you see like a pricing ecosystem service for water in terms of, so you see that if you have, for instance, I don't know, a mechanism that you kind of add value to the water itself, because you're not impacting biodiversity, you're not impacting forests where you are, the water, you keep the water clean or something like that. So how do you see this connecting to an ecosystem service market, for instance?
I don't know if you are familiar with the approach of natural capital.
Yeah.
It's very nice approach.
Yeah.
I do like it. Because it allows to understand flows of ecosystem services, for example, of provision of water, clean water, etc. And to understand what can happen if, for example, land use is modified abruptly. We can have some idea of the change of values, of the change of it's not pricing. I think it's more value. Estimate some minimal values. We have some confusion related to that. For example, in economics, it's hard to explain what is the value of economics. I think it's not pricing of matter, is to understand the value of ecosystem services for people. So it is hard. It is hard because we need to have to detect, for example, demand and to understand that. How, for example, ecosystem services are part of utility functions of people in one hand, and in other hand are part of production functions. For example, in the case that we are studying in Valdivia, we have a provision of the native forest related to more clear water. We have more clear water. Domestic system for water need to be cleaning less. So filters are more durable, more overcoming, and there is a lot of less cost for people who use water, and we are trying to capture those kind of relations. Also, for example, for sediments retention, for nutrients capture carbon, for example. It is hard, but I think it's a very nice approach to understand what is the relationship with communities of people and nature, and how we can to incorporate those values in our well-being. That's the idea. It's not simple. It's hard because we need a lot of data, as you know. Geophysical analysis are very important, but also those geophysical analysis need to have one notion of value, not pricing, notion of value. That's the idea I can make. It's not simple, but it's very informative, for example, for politicians. Right? So we need to, a lot of politicians say, hey, we need to restore ecosystem, need to improve water system, etc. So these approaches can allow to understand better the relationships, and also to make some prioritizations for limited resources finance. We try to apply, for example, one subsidy or similar. We need to make those analysis, cost benefits analysis to apply. That's my case. My opinion.
Yeah. alguma pergunta do pessoal? Não. So, one thing that you, because here, for instance, there was so the dynamics quite different. A lot of land use change here, a lot of deep soils that, so you have a lot of erosion going to rivers. And one of the arguments you have, and there is an exercise not far from here to have payment for ecosystem service, attributing value to some sort of action on the land that would benefit the system. Was exactly on that point that you reduce the cost for water treatment. So you have less sediment, you have less nutrient, and you reduce cost. And this is something that is that I think there is very few, but some examples here in Brazil trying to do that, and especially related to land use and because the water itself has the logic is that the water is an essential resource, that the trade, it's so you don't sell the water, you sell the bottle. The thesis, the water there is an element that's essential for life, so you cannot treat that. So when you have an autarkia, you have the right to explore that resource, so you pay for the exploitation of the resource and not for the resource itself. So that's why it's interesting, this different perspective. So what you do in Chile, you have a portion of this resource that is tradable. You can trade that. You can say, okay, so I'll sell this amount of water for you, and then you pay me something, or you do. So that's trading an essential resource, which is interesting because then you part of the essential resource, you kind of detach it from a common good, from a common resource. It's like if you would get out. So I have this part of the atmosphere here that has less pollutants. So I'm gonna sell you, dress it or something like that. Well, in a way, it could be carbon mining, but I mean, so there's difference there. It's like I think that dialogue is much more with the biodiversity market than the carbon mining itself, in my perspective. So I don't know. So I think it's a philosophical thing also. So how you treat that thing, but also it can be something that channelizes resource for that perspective, that for improving that, So ecosystem service. So how to say solution that are based on ecosystem process and things like that. If you can add value to that, and that can become a market, not that market solution for everything, I don't think so, but it might be a way to channelize resource. So I don't know what you think about this sort of philosophical stuff, and because I think this has much more of a, let's say, an environmental view than an economic. I think. So I see the economics of this like a maybe a facilitator or a way to make things happen. That's not the core. But that's the vision. If you have a vision more of from the environment perspective.
Maybe just here in Brazil, water is much more abundant than in Chile.
There's this tension.
And I don't know why. It's interesting to know how it works, the gestão, the management in Chile. Because here in Brazil, it's like there's so much, but at the same time, there is a worrying about how it's going to be in the future. Like that's why there is ANA, there is SPA.
It's a national agency for
Isso, agências reguladoras que that take care of it. And beside that, there's also like difficult to regularize this.
Yeah. It's hard. There is no one answer, but I think that those kind of exercises try to put in the table some relevant information for policymakers finally, because policymakers in some cases need to be oriented in decision making, and it's not easy
to reduce the level of stupidity of the decision. Right? To reduce the level of stupidity of the decision.
It's hard, but
Some policymakers stupidity.
Yeah. So, but I think you brought one point that is very crucial on this, which I think is dialogue. The blind to extract the water, which is the old target. And the need for that in climate change is that how are you going to bounce this in the future? So you're gonna reduce the water, or is it someone like the less favored people that's going to have easy access? Because we're seeing this already in Brazil. So the work that we did in Western Bahia, that was already showing that, that you have a population that is not having a more difficult access to water because of the irrigation needs, especially surface water. And then and not only surface, but shallow underground water. So not deep, but still when you have a higher hydrological dynamic. So you see that, the lack of surface water associated to those use is certainly going to impact who has less access. And that climate change comes on top of this, so reducing the availability of that, which I think dialogues with what Celso said in terms of how meteorological data kind of are coupled with the economic data. So in part of that is, I think that's an interesting perspective, that you add value to that resource, not only in terms of access to it and how much you have to pay because of extracting, but how much you have to pay in terms of taking, let's say, more than the capability of the system in terms of projection as well. Because the system, the irrigation systems are established and they sit there for decades. And if you reduce the amount of water, they're still demanding water, or you stop all the operation, or you extract more water from a limited system. So I think when you start having price on this, not only in terms of amount, but in terms of the risk of the resource being in danger. So those sort of investment have to think over. Because so the water is gonna be more and more expensive throughout time, and not only more and more unavailable or lacking or reduced throughout time. So it seems that I think a blend of what is a water market to some sort of this perspective might be interesting. I don't know.
It reflects the scarcity of energy.
Yeah.
It's hard, but should reality.
Yeah, if like the soybean would have to add this price in its term, and also part of this is because of the water. It's the cost of the water, not just the cost of using the water. And then if you have a system that is more integrated and less demand in terms of that, so you have reduce that price in terms of the price. I don't know. I imagine it's very complex, but thinking nothing as an economist, but okay.
Can I?
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah.
When you said about the land tenure and then legalization, not became much clear the relation with the other markets. What are you saying about a land market as well. And I remember you saying about how complex is to register a land in Chile. Because here is so complex as well. Here to you make have idea the complete registration of a land involves 2 documents, not only one. A document for the financing and just after a register.
Yep, it's the same in Chile. We have, as I say, we have a lot. We have a. Is there one loan?
No, particularly me, I work with real estate.
The lawyers are hiring me when I say. Well, the institutional design say, hey, you have one market for real estate, but you have to pay for the house, for the land, and then you have to go to the public registry to make the registration and pay the tax. Most of people didn't do the second part.
Okay, here as well.
With land, yes, in Chile, but with water, no. As I said, we have 2 separate markets, so you can be owner of water, but not of land. Or to the contrary, be the property of land, but not of water. It's hard.
Okay.
But in Chile, we have a lot of problems with land market. I think it's more regulated for people have more internalized the information, so the people make the second registration. But for water, is only the estimation of 5% of owners are completed the formalization. So the values of these transactions are not confident. That's the public register of the directorate, the National Directorate of Water, DGA, is not credible because they have only the companies are making the register complete. So a lot of farmers or other people is not doing the register completed. So it's important to understand what the logical of governance behind that, because if we have water user organizations that are active, that are transparent, for example, basically the management. In some basins, that's the situation. For example, when we have river basin devoted to agriculture, that's the situation. But if we have, for example, mining or other uses, in industrial agriculture, among others, the situation changes. So it's something to look in detail, I think. But it's complex.
Thanks.
All right. Should I call for an end? Yeah. Não, lá eu parei no norte.
Acho que é isso.
Okay, so all right. So thank you very much. It was very nice, very informative, and thanks for being here with us. And thanks everyone that is around here for this talk. And I'm sure if there's any, and when we publish this, we're gonna propagate. But also, I'm sure that Lisandro is, if any doubt comes along, Lisandro will be more than happy to reply to it. Sure. Right. Muchas gracias, señor.
Uns doces.
A gente podia treinar espanhol.
Ele pediu o pessoal no Zoom.
Tchau, pessoal do Zoom.
No YouTube também.
Eu despeço o pessoal do Zoom. Tchau, pessoal do Zoom. Tchau, pessoal. Tchau, gente. Obrigado, viu? Obrigado pela presença. Tchau, pessoal do YouTube também.
Eu vou parar. Então,